All right, we'll call the meeting to order at 7:05. If everybody please stand for the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Go ahead and do a quick roll call. Mayor Mosier is here. The following trustees, we have Smith, Crawford, Pritchard, and Botsford. Here. All present. Treasurer Doucette. Here. Clerk McQuay.
Here.
DPW Superintendent Wolf.
Here.
Attorney France.
Present.
OIC Weisdorf.
Here.
All right. Only one absent is Mr. Rucker. Go forward with the approval of the minutes. We have February 8th, regular board meeting, February 22nd, work session, March 7th, budget work session, and April 4th, organizational meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I have some corrections.
What corrections would those be?
Let's see. On the February 22nd meeting, the resolution 265, which is about tabling the union contract, that
It
was
was-
not voted 5-0.
Nope, it was I, 3, nay 2. The two voting against were Lefebvre and Mosier. I've got that correction.
Okay. And then on the March 7th, you have regular board meeting.
Should be a budget work meeting.
Okay. I'm good with that.
Okay, do I have a motion on the minutes?
I'll make a motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Which sponsor did you say? Okay, it's unanimous, carried and approved. Moving forward, for public comment, first off, we have Mr. Mark Burr with Cattaraugus County discussing the Cannon Bridge.
All right, I want to share an update on that project. We, the county, have been looking at replacing that structure for a number of years now. Obviously, you're familiar with some of the unusual soil conditions we have in the area, and certainly that's limited our abilities to replace that bridge. This is a federal aid project. When I say federal aid, 80% of it, and I do have others if others want copies. It's 80% federal aid. The 20% is local, which is a combination of state funds and county funds. But anyways, we've looked at a number of alternatives to replace the structure, and that was our desire all along. But what's happened because of a couple things is the project's taken, we're approaching 10 years, believe it or not, looking at doing that. So there is a time frame on our money to execute the project there. Number two, the structure itself is posted. I think it's at 8 tons now. It is in relatively poor condition. This is one of those situations that the bridge literally is going downstream, settling and moving apart from the upstream wing walls. There's around an 8-inch gap between that. We are monitoring that. One of our concerns is water's going to find its, right now water's going through it over a weir and a set of stair steps that service the outlet to drop that down. What's unique about this particular site is there's about 12 feet from the inlet to the outlet of that structure. And certainly Lover's Lane and the soil conditions in this area are very unstable. So if for some reason that water would breach that structure, we would have a head cut that went up through that valley. And Lover's Lane as we know it now would be, it's crooked now, it's bad now. It would be worse, significantly worse, if there was a head cut that was allowed to propagate upstream. So there's a significant environmental need that breach stays in place to hold that stream back. But anyways, essentially the project originally was anticipated for around $2 million, $2.3 million. That's what the state and federal government allotted for this particular project. We've been struggling with soil boring issues out there, the bad soils. It's just muck. There's really not much there to work with. There's no rock. We went down 200 feet with soil borings. There's an artesian condition underneath that particular area, which just only aggravates the engineering design even further. So in essence, what's happened is the cost of the bridge has gone from $2.3 million to around $4 million. The state didn't like that very well, nor did we, but essentially they capped us at $2.3 million. So if we, the county, are to build a bridge there, basically that additional cost, that $1.7 million, is 100% county, would be a county responsibility. The state wasn't gonna kick any more money, nor was the federal government. And again, we were quite disappointed about that. We took this information to our legislative committee. We discussed it, we discussed priorities, and essentially the consensus of the DPW committee on the county legislature was not to build the project. Not to build a bridge project, but we do need to build a project. We're still gonna do a project there, and it's still gonna cost about $2 million, believe it or not. The existing structure is gonna be removed. If you're familiar with the bridge on 353, on the other end of Tannery Street, there's a series of weirs, riprap piling walls that drops the water down over that distance. So we're gonna remove the structure. There'll be 5 or 6 piling walls. There'll be a series of riprap over the course of a couple hundred feet to do that. Even that project is gonna approach a couple $1 million. It's very expensive, and this is a very large thing that we need to do in regards to protect the stream, protect the soils and things of that sort. It's been an interesting project. I learned a lot about bad soils, and if this is almost the worst case to ever consider to build a bridge. How we've gotten the longevity out of the bridge that we've had, knock on wood, we've been fortunate. Now, as for the existing bridge, again, it's in relatively poor condition. We do monitor that thing. It's our full intent to keep it open as long as we can, but you could get a call tomorrow morning that says something's happened, we need to close that. So we're prepared to close that at the drop of a hat, but it's fully our intent to leave it open as long as we possibly can. So where do we go from here? Basically back to the drawing board. Probably in about 4 to 6 months, there'll be a couple public hearings that's gonna involve the town and the village in regards to that bridge. We're gonna go back to the drawing board, redesign a project. That project's gonna require some land to be purchased. Due to the amount of land that we need to purchase or get easements on, there'll be a public hearing associated with that. So we will be back, fully describe what the context of the work's gonna be and to move that forward. So this is my first time, I think, in 26 years at the county. I've had to come to a community. It's usually I'm gonna disrupt your place, I'm gonna tear it up, and that type of stuff. I guess I'm gonna disrupt it and tear it up. I'm just not gonna put the bridge back, type of thing. You know? And again, it's not something that we took lightly. It's not something that the county didn't want to do. We really wanted to do this, but the expense and the priorities, it just wasn't gonna get paid for in time and fashion. And if we allowed the 10-year time frame to lapse, and certainly then that money goes away, and for that to all become local money, county money, was just prohibitive. The money's just not there in the program to do that. So, questions, comments?
I have a few questions. Last time you were here, the project that was determined to be the best scenario was project, or alternative 3C, which is the one
Yep.
you're talking about,
Yep.
the helicoil piles.
Yep.
That at the time was estimated to be the 1.9.
Yep.
Just under $2 million. At the time, and that was in 2016 dollars, was $1.995 million in 2016 dollars. At the time, you were going to put in one of those helical piles, load it and monitor it to see how it held up in the clay soils. Was that ever done?
We never actually installed the pile, but what we did is we came back with a special machine. Basically, it's got it's like a hydraulic cylinder, And it's a bearing. Basically, you push this rod into the earth. And what that does is it gives you some resistance of the soils, and that's measured. And that gives us some of the soil properties that we're looking for, advanced soil properties that allow us to do the piling design. And that was, the soils are so weak, it was $600,000 or $800,000 to begin to even think about doing those types of things. It was prohibitively expensive. So we didn't actually install the helical pile, which is just a big fin and screw it into the ground. We had other methods that we went, the penetrating rod, measured the soil properties. We went back to the people that wrote the book. They came back with a design, and again, it was cost prohibitive.
What's the difference between that design and the design that, I think this was 2 or maybe even 3 years ago? What's the difference between the two?
The biggest difference is not so much the design, it's the expense associated in the pilot. We basically, it's a bowl of jello. We don't have anything that we can use to support that bridge. Because we can't go deep, because there's artesian condition. If the piling penetrates the artesian condition, then you get piping of the water up through the piling, you get sediment loss. And that's absolutely the last thing we can have on this particular site. So,
But it's a big slab of concrete, for lack of better terms, that has sat there for 79 years.
I understand.
79
It's been there a long time.
And now, in the course of just a short period of time, the project is more than double. More than double.
Yep.
It just makes no, and at the time, that was already considered to be the most expensive option.
Yeah, again, it has to do with the piling. The bridge itself doesn't change a whole lot. It's the foundation system associated with it. And the other thing that we are required to do is when we take the federal money, we have a nice thick design manual on all the rules and regulations you have to do to meet that. And the new design standards tell us what those safety factors are, what those varying things are. And again, it's become very significantly well beyond what we anticipated price-wise.
Is there any concern about the fact that Mud Creek Hill is already sliding?
Believe me.
And
that's
without
a concern.
Tannery Street, we have no access out of town? I mean, that's a concern of mine as a village resident. I'm sure of many village residents.
Matter of
in
fact,
town.
there's 5 slides between Otto, there's 5 major slides going through here. Again, any one of those particular slides, and again, you gotta keep in mind that these particular slides are soil failures that are 30 and 40 feet deep. There's layers of clay, there's layers of gravel that's in there, and they just don't like each other very far. There's a lot, obviously a lot of movement. We do have a plan this next, either this summer or next summer, depending upon where the money lands in regards to some of our paving stuff, but County Road 12 is a priority. We need to get some of those slides, I'm not gonna say repaired, because the repair is really 40 feet deep. To repair some of those things are, it's $1 million for 1,000 feet of road repair. There's a bunch of piling and stuff that goes in there. That's not what we're doing, but we're gonna go in there, we're gonna repair some of the slides, we're gonna make sure they drive better. If there's some ancillary drainage things that we need to do, we cleaned up, reestablish the ditches and the drainage, we'll do that to the best of our ability. So 12 is a priority to get that addressed.
I hope 13's right behind it. 'Cause it's-
Well, 13 that's another whole, yeah, exactly. It's money. Quite frankly, it boils down to money.
One more question.
Sure.
On the report you gave us back then, the average, I don't remember what the average, but its average daily traffic was 374, and now my understanding is 317.
Yeah, something like that. It's probably just an updated number. Certainly, there's not a lot of heavy truck traffic on it. And again, in the big picture, less than 400 is a low volume road. Something like Mud Creek Hill, you're gonna see 2,000, 2,500 vehicles a day. Lover's Lane probably goes, I don't know, 500, 600, 700, somewhere in that range. So this is, again, not that we want to close it, but certainly the priority is, it's a low priority to get it funded. It would be almost impossible within the next few years. Well, and we're confident if, again, not that, we take a lot of excitement about saying, no, we're not gonna build your bridge, but given the facts of how pricey that it's gotten, that you would concur that if you were faced with the same decision, we would gladly give it to the village. We'd gladly give you the $2.3 million that was planned to do. To come up with additional money is just something that, quite frankly, is not in the program.
So when does that federal money time out?
No, we got about another couple of years.
So,
Those federal programs inherently take a minimum of 5 years. Some of them can take up to 15 years. So again, we're approaching that 10-year time frame on the horizon. And
but that money has gotta go towards.
yes, we cannot take that money. We can't make a decision tonight. Say, okay, we agree that we don't want to, do that project. It's not a prudent expenditure of money. Let's take that $2.3 million and we're going to go pave County Road 12. That is specific for that project only. It gets spent on that project or it goes back into the kitty that we don't have access to. It's not a discretionary type thing.
I don't know, Mark, I'm having a hard time believing this number. I just don't get it, this design from before had, oh God,
Boatloads of piling.
boatloads of pilings.
Boatloads.
That was the original design. And those pilings, the intent of those pilings is to have more surface contact between the piling and the ground surface, which as we all know is clay. I'm not sure you can put any more in there. Now, as I said, a slab of concrete has sat there for 79 years. I guarantee that all the surface contact of all these pilings is more than that slab of concrete sitting down there. I just can't for the life of me believe this new price. Especially when the entire 219 bridge replacement over Cattaraugus Creek is $16.9 million. They just don't seem in the same ballpark. And I know one's 4 point something, and one's 16.9, but you have a 650-foot bridge that has to be removed, rebuilt, and we're talking about, I can't remember the length of this, but it's obviously nowhere near the length, and it's not 100 feet off the ground. I just don't.
Apples and oranges.
I guess I don't.
Let me explain that to you. This Tannery Street is not only a bridge, it's a dam.
I understand.
And that 12 feet of those unstable soils is something significant. $2 million, roughly half of that project is to stabilize the stream bed so you can build something there. And again, the piling, and I'll tell you exactly why the piling's gotten so expensive, is because when we analyze the settlement associated with a bridge we want to put on top of that, a bridge, you can have a certain amount of settlement, you can have differential settlement from one end to the other, and all that type of stuff. And we usually talk about settlement in terms of an inch, a half inch, not a big deal. Our soils people are coming back and telling us that the settlement associated with the piling that we're putting on this bridge is in excess of 4 to 6 inches. And the type of structure that we're looking to build there cannot withstand that type of movement and that, any type of differential things. And again, remember, we're not just designing this thing, and you're right, the old structure's been out there for 80 years, it's kind of been there, but I will tell you it's moving. It's moved
I've seen the
downstream.
pictures, I know it's moving.
It's moved downhill, so, the safety factor right now on that bridge is 1. The safety factors that we have to use as part of the new design are 2.5. So it's significantly different. And that's what we're required to do.
How come the latest rating, or the latest inspection report actually was higher than the previous one from?
We probably went out there and we did some repairs to one of the tubes. And that very often happens. We go on there and fix up an element, the rating will go up. They go up and down depending upon what's going on.
All right, well, the cost for alternative 4 before, which was bridge removal with no replacement, and doing the work you were speaking of, was 1.1 million dollars in 2016 dollars. Now you're estimating 2.2 million. Now you're estimating 2.2 million.
Yep.
So that's double too. What caused that to double in price?
Riprap piling, again, soil conditions, you got repiling, 5 or 6 sheet walls, you're gonna go across that, stair step that down.
That was the design for the first one. That was the design 3 years ago.
That was a similar design.
Similar.
When do you anticipate that the bridge will be closed?
Well, we hope to keep it open till we do the work. But again,
Is it realistic, you think?
what I'm concerned with is the water finds a way to go. We know it's moved. We suspect some of the water's going underneath it. We don't see a lot of bad things happening. We don't see a lot of good things happening out there. But once it gets to a point and starts to find its way around under that structure, then we'll have to close it immediately if it separates a little bit more. Again, knock on wood, it's, I won't say unstable, but doesn't seem to be getting too significant unstable. And again, it's a judgment thing. This is a tough site. It's bad soils. So again, our intent is to keep it open, but I fully want you to understand we could do an inspection out tomorrow and get a call. There's a hole in the middle of the road, or in one of the abutments, or the wing wall is tipped, or whatever, and we're prepared to close it immediately.
How often are you guys monitoring it?
Once a month, somebody goes out there and takes a look at it. I drive over, she can attest to that. But, you know, more often than she cares to see the old bridge, type of thing. I mean, we are monitoring.
What are you gonna do to stop it from doing this, from the walls coming in, when you take the bridge out? What's gonna stop Tanner Road from butting into Tanner Road? What I'm saying is when they dug the sewer line across the sewer plant, they dug with a 5-foot bucket and put a 6-inch line in. I know the guy worked the job too, the guys. Before they could get, by the time they got the line in, got the stone in, they were walking through it straight forward. And by the time they got it across, they had to walk sideways to the ditch. That's how much that's pushing this way.
Yep.
You take that bridge out, what's it gonna do to our sewer plant? Is that gonna start creeping away? What's gonna happen up on, the end of Franklin Street? Is that gonna start coming more this way? It's already moving. I mean, I realize that bridge is holding this way, but it's also stopping this way.
And part of, one of the questions that Eric asked is why has it gotten so much expensive? Normally, when you see riprap put in this area, it's 18 inches thick, it's 2 foot thick. Some of the revetments we do are 4x4 keys and things of that sort along bridge abutments. The rock that we're talking about in the bottom of the stream for some of these stair steps we're talking about is 6 feet. So it's just big rocks. Just gonna fill it in, shape it in a trapezoidal section to help stabilize that and keep it doing it. Again, all the soils in the area are bad stuff. So it's significant. This is not a simple project. It's not inexpensive.
If it comes down to it and it has to be closed, is the county gonna try and speed up the process to figure out a way to?
When you deal with federal aid, you're on their clock. There are certain milestones that you have to meet as part of that. Certainly, we want to get the bridge resolved one way or another. And certainly, again, our next big step is we've regrouped internally with the consultants. And again, consultants design these things. The consultants modify the proposal on what the scope's going to be now, so that's obviously changed from a bridge. Based upon that, probably about 4 to 6 months out, there'll be a public hearing as to what all the details are, exactly what land that we need to acquire, easements we need to acquire, what are the impacts to the wetlands and all that type of stuff. We'll have all that stuff for a public hearing. There'll probably be 1 or 2 public hearings, either with the town or village or for both, type of thing, and that will give you a good feel for number one, what the scope of the work's gonna be, and then what time frame it's gonna take to get the land acquired and finish the design and things of that sort. It's unfortunately, federal aid projects take a lot of time.
Any chance of extending Waverly and forgetting the bridge? Put Waverly down over to Route 12 and go around the bridge. We used
I can tell you that it's not been looked at, from my perspective in regards to that bridge replacement.
Well, everything's sliding over there, but so is it over on Route 12 on, like Gary Bridgers, and every year they put another foot of blacktop in there.
There's,
When that gets down to 40 feet, it ought to quit.
well, I'll share with you that we did, we did soil borings over at Malabar's Corners, and on one side of the road, the asphalt was about 2 inches thick on the uphill side, and the downstream side, or on the downhill side, I think we had the asphaltic materials 18 feet deep. Yeah, so there's, again, it's due for another couple feet to go back in there and do that.
But the only way you can fix that is keep adding.
Now, and again, something like that, if the question was, what would you do to fix that? Now, that has a little different set of circumstances in Tanner Street, because there's rock down there. But essentially what you would do is you would take and you core the rock, you put it in the tube, you clean the tube out, you go and you core into the rock, and then you make a rock socket. You basically put a piece of piling down into the rock, you fill it up with concrete, and then basically you affixed this piling right into the rock. And you're gonna move over 6 feet, and you're gonna do that again, and you're gonna do 6 feet, you're gonna do it again. Can those things be done? Absolutely. But again, the cost of that type of work is significant. And again, we've done some preliminary soils calculations. We could very well fix 1,000 feet of it, and then a little bit over the hill by Skinner Hollow decides it's gonna go. And which has happened, type of thing. So you get one little piece stabilized, and the piece right next to it. Again, most of you have lived here the better part of your life, and go to Ottawa on a regular basis, and it's always, seems to be a little more active in the last few years, but it's always been that way. They just wanna go to Guanda, I guess. Anybody else? Any questions? I have some leftover copies if anybody wants any additional information. If you have questions, concerns, you're welcome to let us know. We'll come back. Again, those public hearings are gonna be big deals, so again, I know not everybody's excited that we're not gonna get that bridge. It is gonna have impacts to the treatment plant and some of those things. Again, that's the time and place to have those conversations so we can make sure we minimize some of those impacts.
Thank you.
All right?
Yeah, thank you, sir. It's good seeing you.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Jake.
Just an outline that I wanted to run through most of the items on here with the board. You guys have something to get home with you. Notes on, well, yeah, I tried to do more of an outline. So, I came to, the last board meeting and we were able to address, contract number 1 in phase 1 of the project, which is, meter replacement. So, that is out on the street right now in the bidding process. We've, advertised, we were proposed that we get it in the paper on the 7th. Bid opening is scheduled for the 28th. And we've, contacted a whole list of both meter suppliers and meter installers that have expressed interest in the project. So they have the plans out there, and hopefully we'll get good numbers on the 28th. Related to that, I had asked Rose to distribute this FAQs sheet that we put together on meters. Did any of the board members have a chance to look at that or have any questions on any of them?
I do. I skimmed through it. I had quite a pile to get through
Yeah,
for this meeting, but
I'm sure.
I skimmed through it. A couple things that caught my eye is number 22. How will this affect my water service? The new water meter is not expected to affect your water service negatively. Service is the key word there. And on the next, it raises a concern for me, but I think on the next one, I pay more for water because of the installation of the new meter. Water rates are expected to change as a result of budgeting decisions necessary to service the debt being used to finance the whole water system improvement project. However, the increase in the rate will not be solely because of the new meter installation project. I think we need to make sure, and maybe I didn't get much further, so correct me if I'm wrong, I glanced through. I mean, the whole premise of this project was that there were so many meters in this village that didn't work. We really didn't know what our usage was. And instead of replacing meters all those years, we just kept raising the rates to raise revenue to cover the expenses. So we finally got this opportunity to get this grant to replace the meters, 100%. There are several people in this village who have meters that don't work and have had meters that haven't worked for a long time. When they get a new meter, some of them are gonna get a shock because their families of 4, 5, or 6 that have been paying minimum all these years that are gonna find out that that's not the case. And I think we need to be upfront with people and make sure they're well aware of that. You know, my intent with this project is always, hopefully, after we get new meters and we find out what our actual usage is, was hopefully we could reanalyze our rates and possibly even drop our minimums. We got a long ways to go. We need meters. You can't even have that discussion until you have meters. But I've shown before that we pay the highest minimum and the highest rates in the county. Okay? And there are several senior citizens that don't use anywhere near what a family of 4 uses in the course of a quarter. That are paying the same rates, paying the minimums. So I think we need to be truthful and honest with people, and I don't know if it's changing one of these answers or adding one or describing that somewhere, but I think that's important.
Yeah, I think your concern is a good one, and I think probably, it might be, we might wanna reword that a little bit, but I think we should add another question to this, and,
Well, would it common sense just prevail and say, if you have 4 negative meters working, that your bill's gonna go up?
no. I mean,
Wouldn't that make
No.
sense?
it does if you understand the big picture, but if you're just paying your bill and you don't know your meter's broken,
That's right.
it's, that's gonna be a shock, and, the meter replacement, like Eric pointed out, it's kinda twofold. It's one, to find out what our actual usage is, and that informs future work in the village's project. So as far as how much source development do we have to do, those type of things, so we don't spend money getting more water than we actually need to serve the village. The second aspect is to be able to fairly assess the charges to everybody. That's always the goal with metering in a public water system, is you wanna be able to make sure everybody's paying fairly versus one person paying a lot.
Right, and that affects the sewer too. That affects the sewer, because the sewer charges are based on water use. Okay, but also, we have had discussions about, we have a 3-year cycle where we pump tanks. We do it because, we don't do it based on usage, we do it because we haven't done it for the last 2 years, so we do another one. A senior citizen who uses 2,000, 3,000 gallons a quarter versus a family of 4, 5, or 6 that uses 12, 14,000 gallons of water per quarter, those are the ones that are gonna need. So the whole intent was to use that data to drive other decisions for the sewer as well.
Absolutely, and, I think it would be wise to make that correlation when we're talking about the potential for an individual to see their bill change when metering is active. We can mention the implication it has on their sewer bill as well. I can check with Rose, we may have a copy of your sewer rates, I honestly have.
It's on the website.
I can't say that I've looked at it closely for how much it would affect it, but, well, I can certainly, add this. How would you like me to get it, would you like me to send it out to board members for your review, or would you like me to just coordinate with Rose? I can go either way. I can send it out, I'll get it to Rose and she can get it out to the board if there's any comment. If not, she can get it posted. Were there any other questions on any of these? This, like I explained, misleading, and we want it to be helpful to individuals in your community so that they can anticipate what's gonna happen here and answer their questions ahead of time. To that end, like I said last time, we would recommend that we try to get it out into the community, post it where there's publicly accessible boards. I don't know, Jenny Lee and Brooks, do they have bulletin board, you
Yeah.
put something like this up here at the building hall, and then if we make it available online, people that use the web, they can access it that way. Yeah, as far as, you are correct, Eric, that, when this project, when the meters are installed, and you're able to get an accurate view of usage, then the board can make decisions about how they set up their rate structure, how they distribute it fairly, and it may result in changes where you're not always going up. I mean, the capital charge from both phase one and, phase one doesn't really have a major, debt implication, but phase two does have a significant implication, and so that plays into it as well. And it also, it changes with the number of services you have, all those type of things as well. Okay, well then, as far as this goes, we'll get this revised and I'll get it over to Rose tomorrow with that added question answered on there. In phase one, before we can start any of the work, there's signage that has to be in place, and John has been working, he has the sign prepared, I believe, this one, right? So we just have to put, it's a project sign that's required as part of the funding from CDBG, from Office of Community Renewals Regulations for a CDBG grant, and with this project being kind of spread around, we spoke with them and they agreed to let us put one large, the one large sign that meets their specifications. We're gonna put it out at the spring site on 353, it's the most, it's visible and it's a single place, and then we also were able to print a smaller sign for Rose to hang here at the village hall, since there's not really a yard per se to put one out front or anything. So those will be in place before this meter work has to start, for sure. And contract, pardon my numbering on the contracts, we had started with having a contract 1 for meter supply and contract 2 for installation, and merged it into one specification. And so now contract 3 is master metering. That has to do with meters on the spring transmission lines and then tank overflow, which those allow us to look at the big picture of how much water we're getting to the village from the spring sites and then how much we're overflowing, and then of course with how much we're selling to the customers, you can have a complete picture. As far as overflowing at the tank, it's a little bit of a challenge to meter it because it's an overflow. It's going down gravity pipe and draining away. It drains into the old tank lagoon that was up there, the old reservoir. But the best technology that we think that would apply here is that we're gonna set, it's a pretty simple concept. There's a weir that is on the overflow box, so it's a defined size opening. We measure the water elevation in the tank above that weir, and we can mathematically calculate with a flow computer how much water we're overflowing, and then we can log it. It can integrate right into the village's existing telemetry box that's up there, and the water operator will be able to look, and it's just another metered stream, so we know how much we overflow. That's really important if we're talking about. There's a standard called the 10 state standards, Great Lakes Upper Mississippi River Board, and it regulates a lot of things about public water supplies, including questions of redundancy on water supply and having backup sources, all of that. And so when that's telling us we have to be able to provide the peak day demand in the village with your largest single source out of service, then we need to make sure we know what is our peak day demand precisely and not have it be based on something like water that's overflowing the tank because of the nature of the springs. As far as that goes, we talked with the product rep that has worked with the village a lot in the past on their telemetry system in Wakefield, and he helped us walk through what equipment we would need in order to meter this. It's pretty inexpensive. He gave us a quote of his quote was, $2,145 for all the equipment and the programming, the integration into telemetry. And the only thing that's assuming that we're able to use an existing conduit that runs from our telemetry building up there, our sampling building over to the tank hatch. And that the village staff will be able to assist him with running the cable through the conduit. And then we were able to get a budget quote from another company that does the same type of work for the same type of equipment. They're not familiar with the village's system, and they aren't really familiar with the village's telemetry box. So their budget quote was $3,700 for the equipment, and then programming and calibration, they wanted an extra $800. So their quote is quite a bit more. I wanted to present it to the board. I talked with the funding agency, and there's a couple ways that we can approach this. The board could make a determination that in order to do this metering up there, it's integrating with the existing telemetry. We just go with the product rep that we've worked with in the past that implemented the whole telemetry system. Or under your procurement policy, you could go with a two-written quote approach, and I think that that's probably going to be just as straightforward at this point. We've got another company willing to quote it, even though their quote isn't particularly competitive because they're not familiar with what you're doing up there. And the other guy has worked with John and Jason before him for years. But anyhow, I just wanted to bring that to the board, and you guys can make a decision. And if you have questions about that, the equipment or what we're trying to accomplish there, I can answer those.
No, it makes sense to continue with the same, I mean, if, I would think if the funding agency is gonna allow us to go that route, and continue with the same contractor, with the same equipment, and the same familiarity with our system, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And we also may have emails out, I don't know if you got an answer back, I didn't get one back, but we have basically what he wants to use, we already have one, I don't know if it's maybe too smart for it, but if it's something we didn't even have to spend money on that, same as we find out.
Wanted to also sound like well sensors?
Yes.
Okay. I know that this one is the bottom line is you have one in the tank right now that tells you how full the tank is, but it's monitoring level over a 20-foot range, and this one that we have to use is much more precise. The weir is only 5 inches tall, so you're trying to read the water level down to the 100th of a foot in elevation. So that's the particular piece of equipment he's speccing for price here is a very precise but very low range. It's meant to be close to the water and only read it over a short elevation change. So yeah, we can follow up on that for sure.
Yes.
But does the board have another meeting this month, or would we be waiting till next month? I mean, we can. We have to have this work completed as part of phase 1 for December. So if we want to get those answers and then address it at next month's board meeting, we can go ahead at that point.
Budget meeting on Wednesday.
Great too, so
This Wednesday?
Yeah.
I mean, if we wanted to address it, then we could try to get Ron Wakefield and site process equipment and find out what the village has, or we could aim for next month.
in my mind, it's up to you, depending on what.
It doesn't
you feel
really
the
tell us that.
need is.
I guess one thing it immediately tells us is as soon as you have this installed and you see what's overflowing the tank right now, we know what we're making at the springs, you'll have all of a sudden, one of the big pieces, but how much is leaking on the lines coming to the village, if any, is really the other big question. And that leads into the other master metering, which is there's a vault out at Cobo Well where the two spring lines come together, and we want to put meters in there that would tell us how much makes it there, which is most of the way to the village from the springs. We've looked at a bunch of different types of meters. You don't have power in the vault right now, and we frankly don't want to put a ton of money into infrastructure in that vault if phase 2 makes that vault somewhat obsolete. But one whole branch won't even be coming through there anymore.
Right.
So, we think though that it's likely that we're gonna have to actually cut a meter three elements of the master metering. Are there any questions on any of that? Okay, and then contract number 4 is Kelly Summit Rehabilitation. Tree clearing is done up there. At this point, the work needs to be done in the driest part of the year. Depending on what we have for spring, we may be able to get started on that sooner than later, but we have a plan that, a set of plans that we've been developing and we're getting close to being completed with. They want to go over it with John. We met with him a couple times out there at the site, talk about where we're gonna run the pipes down to the plant and everything. That is to be approved by the funding agency and approved by Cattaraugus County Health Department, Eric Wohlers. He's very familiar with the project and the site. And in the village, up till now, has planned to try to accomplish this work using your own force account labor, which is your own staff. And the answers we've gotten on procurement from the funding agency are we have to go through all the normal channels. So for any materials we need, stone, pipe, if there's any equipment that we have to rent, we have to go through, depending on the price points, it may be written quotes. If it exceeds the village's procurement policy thresholds, then it would have to go to a bid for supply of those materials. They look at aggregate, so the aggregate amount, like you can't buy a small amount of stone and another small amount. They will look at the total, but buying stone from one vendor is obviously a different vendor than who you buy your pipe from, so that does break it up.
How will the labor be handled?
What has been proposed to us at this point is that the village wants to accomplish that with existing
Right, but
village staff.
will the
Force
actual
account,
pay
yeah.
come from the CDBG?
Yes, excuse me,
Or
force,
will it come
force
from the
account,
village budget?
no, force account labor, the way that handles is that it has to be tracked. It needs to be signed off on by the supervisor, which would be John in this case, the DPW superintendent, and, we track hours, and it's eligible to be reimbursed through the project for their wages and fringe. So basically, their time will be being paid by the project to do the work.
As a reimbursement to the village, because I'm just not gonna create separate paychecks for separate.
No, it's you would be submitting,
Yep.
the same channels as if you were paying a contractor.
Okay.
And they'll cut a check to the village and then it's used to reimburse the village. I assume reimburse your fund that you pay payroll out of. The thing that the funding agency asks for is a letter from the village that says that your staff has the technical capability and that you have adequate staff to accomplish the work, which, we're working in the assumption that you do. The village did the work on the other springs a couple years ago, same type of work. So, it shouldn't be anything that's a problem for you guys. It's a little bit bigger, more springs here. Maybe a little more treacherous terrain, I don't know.
It's more in one spot, altogether.
Yeah, I guess, Canyon Hills, that's a little more difficult than the Mayo Springs that you did. But anyhow, that is that's the intent, but just so that the board is aware, you won't be able to just go out and rent a piece of equipment. Like, it has to go through the procurement policies that, the funding agency puts in place. And comply with the village's procurement policies. The final thing we're working through on the rehab up there is a flow limiting splitter. The water treatment plant right now is rated for 100 gallons a minute, and it takes whatever comes to it, which exceeds 100 gallons a minute for quite a bit of the year right now. And so it's really operating above what it's rated for, what 10 state standards once again rates the slow sand filter for. So that's kind of a health department concern, and so part of the project is to put in a splitter that'll only allow some of the water to go to the plant, to keep it at its rated capacity but not exceed it. And so we have been looking at that and trying to come up with the best way to configure a hydraulic splitter. There's a vault right beside the plant where we intend to try to accomplish that work. So then phase 2 of the project is the part of the project that the village received WSRF. Where that stands is some administrative items. We had been preparing our firm's utilization plan for minority and women-owned businesses. We got quotes in from all of our prospective subcontractors last week, and we've been, trying to get the funding agency to review that with us. We expect that that'll be completed this week, and I believe that gives them what they need to schedule closing of short-term financing for phase 2. Project schedule, we had presented that, and that was sent into the funding agency, and we had some relatively generous timeframes in there because we weren't sure when we were gonna close on short-term financing and how that would affect when we can get a surveyor started and when we can get the wetlands delineated and start laying out the design of the pipeline. If we get that done earlier in the year here, then we'll be able to get the design completed earlier and potentially be able to bid the job in 2017 versus 2018. If we had to wait till this fall to do tree clearing, that would push the schedule back into the longer term of the schedule I presented. As far as financing goes, I believe that I'm gonna need to have Mary Chapel speak with you guys and with Gene about that, but in my general understanding, how this works is, once you close on short-term financing, that gives you access to funds, so you can do construction work, or even pay your engineer to do the design work, and you get bills, you review them, approve them, and then they would go to funding agency who disperse funds to the village in order for you to pay your bills. And until you close on short-term financing, you won't have access to the money that you've been awarded here in the grants program. And then at the end of the project, once the final total cost is known, then they'll convert that short-term financing to the long-term financing, which is the 30-year term. And so as far as expenses prior to that, Municipal Solutions can advise you there's some options about whether you pay it with local funds while you're waiting for them to close on short-term financing, whether we wait to start incurring expenses till we close on short-term financing, or whether you do some sort of short-term financing until you close on it, like upon anticipation note is what I've heard used on other projects. But again, that's why we have a fiscal advisor as part of the project team, and they can answer those questions.
Can I ask, thing came up about the couple vouchers that you submitted.
Yeah.
I sent Mary an email today and I haven't heard back. Rose forwarded the invoices to her.
Yes, I spoke with Rose after I sent those invoices over to you guys. You should hold on those invoices because I spoke with Mary Chapel and she wants me to divide it differently between phase 1 and phase 2. When we started out, the environmental work, the environmental reviews needed to be completed for the whole project regardless of whether phase 2 went forward. But now that phase 2 is actually a funded project, I have to divide the cost of the environmental work into the 2 different pots of money.
So you want us to hold off on it?
Yeah, so the board doesn't need to take action on that. I hope to have you a revised invoice before this board meeting, but I have to work with Mary because part of our invoice is actually subcontract fees from her firm. And yeah, I had a call into her today too, and I don't know if she was at the office or not.
Well, she answered my email and I just did not hear back from her. I checked at 6 o'clock.
Okay. Yeah, I apologize for that was my error putting that invoice together. I did not correctly.
But there will be fees that we have to pay out of the village budget for the application for the phase 2 project, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Mary would have to explain what is eligible, but I'm not positive
That's fine.
where the break is, what's eligible in the phase 1 and phase 2. I can tell you phase 1, the CDBG money,
You guys are
They-
getting paid off for that.
but they cap the eligible engineering fees at a certain percentage of the project, and so we can't submit, for instance, the environmental I mentioned, we can't submit any more than what their cap is. And the remaining environmental fees had to go to phase 2. So that's kind of my 1C there, phase 2 is talking about that, short-term finance.
Do you know typically what's the option to go with? Is mostly, is it the bond anticipation note?
Well,
Probably unanticipated.
I'm probably not, again, well, there's new state law too that affects what we're allowed to advise you on as an engineer versus a fiscal advisor, but yeah, I've seen many of the villages pass a bond anticipation note, and some of them that I've worked with have done, interfund, they borrow from their other
Right.
fund for several months until they close.
Depending on the cost.
Short-term financing should be, I think, this summer, like midsummer. But Mary will be able to get a date once we get them to approve our utilization plan for minority women-owned businesses.
Okay.
We had advertised that for 2 weeks. We had responses from firms as far away as New Jersey. It's kind of out of control. But at the end of the day, on the different subcontract opportunities, our contract to you had listed the different things we'd be subcontracting and given an estimated fee, and everything looks like it was at or below what our estimate was. That was good. We got some good prices at the end of the day for a survey for geotech for wetland delineation on phase 2. And that goes through to the village because our contract on those ones is an hourly estimate. Our subcontract cost is less, and it's less than it's billed to you. So contract 5 will be the transmission main, and like I said, we get our utilization plan approved, and then the board gives us authorization to expend funds. We'll go forward with getting wetland delineator out there immediately, and getting the survey done, geotechnical done. All that's necessary information in order for us to do our design. We already, requested right away from the DOT, we already got utility information from the gas company, power companies. So we're gathering up all that we need to do the design already. And okay, update on Blackmore well, I kept that on there in case there's anything that comes up. As far as we know, DC hasn't brought anything new to our attention, or sent over any additional testing at this point. That plant is still mothballed.
Just quick, since you mentioned it though, are we still being reimbursed by the DEC for any expenses, whether it be electric, heat, all those other things?
For down at Blackmar?
Yeah.
Yes. We submit the invoice every month and we get reimbursements.
Okay, thanks.
On admin, the one was out of village customers. That, right now, the village, you have your public water system, and it's in the village, and it has customers outside of the village that they're not technically in the village's water district. They're in the town of New Albion. There is no water district in the town of New Albion. And you may want to have we haven't had a funding agency raise that question yet on this job, but we may want to have village attorney look at whether the village should have out-of-district agreements with these individuals to be providing water, and if any additional people come to you outside of the village, particularly as we're putting a brand new pipeline down the road, those types of things, it may be the village may very much want to pursue an actual legal agreement with them for providing public water, because they're outside of the jurisdiction of the village boundary. I just want to bring that up as a loose end that kind of sits out there. And I think you might have some customers outside of the village in other directions too. So, that's everything I had. Were there any other questions from the board at this point?
Is that why the phone is on there as well?
We're going past it, and it's they have private water right now, but it's a question of whether they would be interested in it. I had heard that there may be some interest there, and there may be other people, because not every house along this pipeline is served right now, so there may be other people that raise that same question. And because we're putting in a brand new pipeline, it's going to potentially generate that interest, that they There are
remember correctly.
there's 20-some that are connected, I believe, outside the village, and a lot of them are closer to the village, right, once you get into.
Doug Pressman's not on, I think it's Stokes, or whoever, it used to be Racy's Place by the bus garage is not on, and oh, there's another name will come to me, Craig Krug?
Yeah.
Don Krug, he's not on.
Yeah, with them being out in the town, it's